Okay, here we are, back with MCP. Now, got a few games under my belt, moving forth in full league. But first off, a bit of hobby talk. Now, this now has one of my distinct pleasures of being my fully painted MCP collection. Now, it's pretty easy when there's only 10 models, but who knows how long it will last, but it's nice to be able to say every model I own for this game is currently fully done. Mostly pretty easy. There's a bit of tricks with some of the lines, especially getting the lines on Venom done and the lines in the webs on most of the spider people. But overall, once you find yourself some good speed paints, tends to make a lot of the hard parts really easy, especially say yellow. But on to the other subjects. Games. Now, as I said, I've come through a league. I'm at a total of 6 games with this at the moment, 4 of which were the league, which had been a 2-2 split for me. Now, the 2 games I won were pretty blowouts. I managed to do, I think, what Webs want to do and grab the objectives and just play keep away for long enough to really score silly high points. The other 2 games, my opponent managed to lay the beat down, and especially my last game against Guardians, he laid the beat down and stopped me from scoring. As for the models I have, there's a few standouts. Having the pair of Mystic Attackers really came in handy. I found them, they could really poke at some weaknesses in a lot of crews. Now, Gwen here, as I've heard she's really good in webs, she was just outshone by Gwenom in pretty much every game I played. It was hard for me not to field Gwenom, and I feel the real tipping point for me is the fact she doesn't have Spidey Sense. So when someone did come for her, there's just not much I could do to defend her. And the combination of Gwenom and Venom just guarding each other worked really well. Iceman at the back there also didn't see too many games. He just couldn't generate the power to do much useful stuff. Unlike even Shadowcat here, when she couldn't generate power, could still grab an objective and run off to a corner and hold it with her stealth and long move pretty effectively. And finally, Peter Parker here. I just think this is probably the worst version of Peter Parker. The other 2 look so much more interesting. I've had him in games where he had 10 power, and I just didn't know what to do with him. Like, what to spend it on and what actions to take. Just opposed to in Miles or the Scarlet Spider really did some good work when they had the moments to shine. As for the game overall, it's good, it's fun. Luckily, it's a sort of casual game for me, because otherwise some of the swinginess in the dice would probably be quite frustrating. But I would say, as though there's some niceties in the way the scenarios are picked. I kind of prefer the way they ended up doing it in Shatterpoint. Not to compare games too much, but the way Shatterpoint goes, where someone scores a round and the other person then gets to pick how the next scenario, as it were, is going to play out, gives a real bonus and lets the game go back and forth a bit more. Where I found, especially playing something like Webs, if I got a heavy lead early, it was just really hard for my opponent to compete with that. But if I had most of the extracts and were hiding away on the edges of the board, he just really struggled to make a comeback. Now, maybe that's just the particulars of the affiliation I chose. Maybe it's just the way I play, coming from games like Malifaux and Infinity. But I did find it quite a downside to the way the game's set up overall. Now, we also just had a major Crisis switchover, so I haven't played those yet. We'll have to see how that goes. That may address a lot of my problems. Speaking of new things, now, of course, after my attempts to start Marvel without a starter box, they finally do what I've been wanting for ages and release starter boxes. Now, as much as it frustrates me that they've done this now instead of, start of the year or end of last year when I was starting to pick stuff up, at least they've finally done it. I kind of like the ones they've got. I don't really intend to run Brotherhood, but X-Men was on my list, so I'm happy to see X-Men. I will probably pick up that box. Spider-Foes, well, I like Spider-Foes as an idea. I'm just not sold on some of the models. Some of them I love, some of them I don't. So, I'll have to see how we go. Now, I do have to say, so I like some of the stuff they're grouping together. One of the things that does concern me is reboxing everything like they do. Like, I believe they did mention they were going to do a Guardians of the Galaxy starter. Now, that was the next affiliation I was going to go to. And this really makes me question that. Like, do I pick them up knowing that there'll probably be a starter later? Do I just commit to doing it now? It makes that decision a lot harder than it otherwise would have been. There's also things like, now that I know there's going to be starters and I'm probably going to pick one up eventually, I'm probably not going to go through the effort of trying to find myself more tokens. Tokens of which have also been the big bottleneck in trying to start this game without a starter box. I mean, using dice, tokens from other games, but overall, like, measuring tools are easy to buy separate. Dice, easy to buy separate. Cards, easy to print out if you have to. But tokens have been the real bottleneck and the real struggle in a lot of those games in what I'm trying to do here. And that really gets solved now with the new starter boxes, but I still have to wait. And as such, I'm probably not going to go out of my way to try and find myself some tokens. I'm just going to deal with playing whatever way I can until I get my hands on one of those boxes. Finally, new stuff. There's a lot of stuff coming that I'm not a heavy comic book guy, so there's a lot of stuff I don't actually recognize. But there's some stuff I just think is spot on amazing. Obviously, the new Spiders stuff really questions me going out of webs, but maybe we can go out for a little while and come back. Overall, I think the game is coming, I don't want to say back, maybe back in a local meta sort of sense, but it seems to really be going strong, and they're not struggling for ideas and new stuff, and they do seem to finally be doing some improvements to the game that I think have been well overdue. But I reckon that's enough from me. So this is me, Captain Steel, signing out.